President Trump saying the call with Putin is going to be about stopping what he calls the bloodbath in Ukraine, and he's made it very clear he wants to stop the killing. With that, let's welcome in now Cliff May, founder and president of the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. John Mills is here with us, retired U.S. Army colonel and former director for cybersecurity policy at the Department of Defense. Welcome, gentlemen, and thanks so much for coming on. Cliff, if I could start with you, what are your expectations for this call? And realistically, what might the ceasefire look like? Could that happen today?
Well, I think it could happen today, but Putin is really not interested in a ceasefire, not interested in a path to peace, not interested in peace. What is he interested in? Conquest. It's very clear, I think, that what Putin wants, the reason he started this war, is that he wants Ukraine to either become a colony like Chechnya or a vassal state like Belarus. Now, the president has threatened on a number of occasions to put serious pressure on Putin in order to achieve a ceasefire, which could result in an armistice, a frozen conflict, sort of what you have between North Korea and South Korea. I think he needs to tell Putin, I'm not kidding, I am going to do that. There are methods I can use to really squeeze you economically. My organization, my think tank, FDD, has a whole memo on the specific economic steps that can be taken. And if Putin hears that and Putin knows he's serious, I think then Putin may say, okay, I will agree reluctantly to a ceasefire. And that's the only way forward. If there's not pressure on Putin, he will not cave. He will do what he did over the weekend, almost 300 drones attacking civilians, mainly in different parts of Ukraine.
Yeah, Colonel, I'll bring you in on that. I mean, this has not been a secret in terms of the desire for a ceasefire by President Trump. The United States has serious skin in the game in terms of what's happening here with all the weaponry, the money that's been sent over through various appropriations. So this phone call, it seems to be there's a little bit of antagonization, if you will, by Putin, saying that he'd show up. Then he doesn't show up at this meeting. Now he's going to take this phone call, but he's dragging it out. And we know that there's some frustration by President Trump. Obviously, this is not a Biden administration. It's much different in terms of how things are handled. Is there a boiling point that Trump could potentially be met with Putin? And what does that look like, Colonel?
Well, thank you, Sean. As Cliff mentioned, the U.S. really has all the cards in this with unleashing American energy and punishing Russia. That's what's been crazy about this conflict is the Europeans have been complaining and concerned about Putin, yet have essentially been funding this whole war by buying Russian gas and oil. Makes no sense. So we got to get away from that total non sequitur that has cost immense bloodshed and loss of life. Also, we have to look at this from the perspective that Russia itself is a colony of China. This is part of the no limits agreement signed between Russia and China to essentially topple the Western system. Putin's promise was to deliver the Ukraine in 72 hours, and 3 years later, here we are. So the U.S. has immense cards that have not been deployed yet to really bring pressure. Putin was a no-show in Turkey. He's also KGB, paranoid about leaving his own capital and his own country. But the fact there is talks, they are making progress. They're talking about longer ceasefires. These are all good. This is the largest negotiated end to conflict with troops in contact since the Korean War.
Wow. Definitely since the beginning of this ongoing war, which has stretched on for years. You know, Cliff, I wanted to check in with you about your analysis of the Trump-Zelenskyy relationship. Obviously, we know the Oval Office was rough, but then they seemed to make amends at the Pope Francis funeral, and even most recently, Vance meeting with Zelenskyy in Rome. Can you share an update there on what you see?
Yeah, the relationship has been tense. It's been fraught. There's no question, but I think it's better. It's better in part because Zelenskyy has said, I think wisely, tell me what you want me to do. I'll do it. Trump says he wants a 30-day unconditional ceasefire. Zelenskyy says, fine, we'll do that. Trump says, I want a deal on the on the mineral rights in Ukraine. Okay. You've got that. He's going along with Trump in every way. He knows that Trump, from a humanitarian perspective, wants the war to end. I think Zelenskyy would be happy to have a ceasefire. He's not happy that 18% of his territory is under occupation by Russia. He knows that. I think he knows that it's unlikely he's going to get that back anytime soon. But if they can get a ceasefire and a frozen conflict, that means that, okay, they'll wait. At some point, there will be a succession in Russia. Putin will pass from the scene. I doubt, I think the colonel will agree with me, that succession will be smooth and peaceful. At that point, perhaps Ukraine can get some of its territory. Look, from a Western point of view, Ukraine is an independent and sovereign country. The people there are fighting for their freedom, for their homeland. They should not be crushed through force from a neighboring country taking over. They do not want to be kissing the ring of a czar in the Kremlin. That's what this war is all about.
All right, got to leave it right there. Out of time. Colonel John Mills joining us. Thank you, Colonel. And also Cliff May. Thank you, Cliff. Appreciate it.
Thank you.